All right, so let's see. Where were we last time we met? We were at WebStorm. I believe we had started creating, working on the assignment, right? That's due a week from today, I believe, right? We started working on the login page and the registration page, and I believe we had just started on the profile page. But did we finish that? I forget. We didn't finish the profile, did we? All right, so let's work on the profile page. Again, we're using a lot of the templates from Bootstrap, right? Don't start from scratch. Use what's out there. Let's close this, and I believe it was this one, no? And let's run this, and I think it's complaining because I don't have a database running. So let's start MongoDB. Sudo Mongo. Oops. Oh, did I mean MongoD? There we go. All right, so let me start the server now again. Let's try that again. All right, and we were on the sandbox. I believe we had started, right? And we started with the lecture. Was it lecture? This one. I think this is where what we worked on last Thursday. Okay, and we were trying to look at it how it would look on a phone. Right, so we can click on it, and this is what it looked like. So there's the login page, and if we register, it navigated to the registration page, right? If we cancel, we go back to the login. If we click on login, it navigates nowhere. What about the registration? Okay, so that's not going anywhere, right? So presumably that login or registration page, if it's successful, it should navigate to a profile page. So let's work on that today and finish that up. Let's see. I believe the implementation was under here, login HTML and register HTML. I'm going to copy one of these because I'm lazy. So we'll call this the profile.html. You'll notice that a lot of the code between login, profile, and register, there's a lot of overlap on the code that we're using. That we're just pasting one on top of another, including the HTML, the head. Some of that is going to go away in the next assignment. Okay, in the next assignment, we're going to show you how to reuse a lot of the content, right? So that we're not loading it every time, right? We'll only load the content that it has changed from one page to the next, right? But to do that, we're going to have to reinvent and reuse a completely different navigation scheme, right? And for that, we'll need to introduce JavaScript and Angular, which we haven't yet, right? So we're not going to do that just quite yet, all right? All right, so the profile page. Let's see if we can navigate to the profile page, and I believe the login page. When we click on the login, we don't want this to be a button, but instead an anchor that references the profile page, right? And same thing with the register page. When if I click on register, instead of a button, right, it'll be an anchor that references the profile page. Okay. Again, all of this will need some logic behind the scenes, right? That checks to see if this user already exists, right? If this username and password is correct, all that. We'll do that a little later. Right? Right now, we're just prototyping, quick prototyping to see if the navigation is okay, getting some feedback from the user, right? So we can come back and move things around without spending too much effort into making this for real. Okay, so if I click on register, it navigates to this profile page, right? So that's working. And I believe according to the assignment, it was provided. We provided a wireframe of what this should look like, and the wireframe looks something like this. The profile looks something like. Where are you? Or it looks something like this, right? A form with a checkbox on the right, a profile on the top. I don't know that we need this, right? Remember what this was is a link that would allow you to always come back to this profile page. But we're already in the profile page. I don't know that we need that at the bottom. But we do need a header, right? We need a fixed header and a fixed footer at the bottom. And we have a form in the middle, right? And the checkbox on the right. So let's do that. Let's implement that. So let's implement first the form. We need a username, an email, a first name, and a last name. So let's do that. So what does it look like right now? It looks like this. Username, password. So it looks like we already have a username. How different are we? How far are we from what we're looking for? Username and email. Okay, so let's do that. Let's change this username and let's change this to an email. So in the profile page, where are you? There you are. So we have a username. This is going to be email, and the type really is going to be an email type. The ID, let's change the ID to also be email. And notice that this now is complaining, saying that I no longer have an ID email, so I'll change that as well. This type over here is interesting because the browser is going to do some data typing, right? And validation that this email has to be has to conform to a particular pattern. There needs to be an @ sign, right? And there needs to be a top-level domain, right? .com or .edu or .whatever, right? But that's as much as it'll validate, right? It won't go any further than that. Any more strongly validation, we would have to do it programmatically, right? But it'll be a minimum validation that can be useful. Okay, as a placeholder, let's put an example email. So it could be Alice at Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland. So let's see what we have so far. There we go. So we have the username and the email. What else do we need? We need the first name and last name. So let's do that. So we'll use this for the first name. So this will be first name, and this will be first maybe. So it references this over here first, and the placeholder might be somebody's name, Alice, and the type we want this to be text, right? Because we can't set a pattern for first name. First name could be anything, right? So it needs to be a text, right? It can't be a password or an email. And we might also need a last name. So let's copy that too. Let's copy it. And this would be last name. We'll call this last, which refers to this last over here. And this will be maybe Wonderland. And also text, right? So let's see where we are. There we are. Okay. So we got that. Let's see. This also asks for links to a website and a logout. And logout, I believe, according to the diagram, needs to go back where? It needs to go back to the login page, right? So from the profile page, we click on logout, it goes back to login, right? If we click on website, it'll go to website list. All right. Okay. So let's do that. Let's do the logout in red. So there it is. So it'll be our red here, right? Danger will be logout, and it's pointed to login.html. This is very convenient. And website. This should navigate to the website list, but we don't have that page yet. Yeah. But let's get it ready. This will be an anchor, which is going to refer to a page that doesn't exist yet. I believe from the requirements, it was pointing to website list, right? And I believe it's called website-list.html, which doesn't exist yet, right? But it's there for when the website appears, right? Let's see. So if we refresh our page, it looks something like this. Logout takes us to login. We click on login, it takes you back to the profile. So it's good, right? So we're quickly prototyping this, right? Again, to keep the user engaged in the process of developing this. Let's see. Okay, so I think the other thing that we need is the top level header and footer, right? That looks something like that. So let's do that. It looks like a sticky header. So let's go fetch one of these sticky headers from Bootstrap. Right? We built one of those for our assignments earlier, but we can't compete with industry strength sticky headers. So let's go and fetch those. We know how to make them, right? But they're never going to look as pretty as already built templates. So let's go to Bootstrap, and I believe they're in the components. And remember, I strongly suggest that you become familiar with a library, either Bootstrap or Foundation or Angular materials, or all of them. You become familiar. Not that you are experts at them, but if you ever need to go create something, you would know where to find it. Okay. If I don't know now, I can always go and I'm familiar enough that given a couple minutes, I can figure it out. Right, but you need to be familiar with it. So familiarize where things are. Okay. All right. So I think there's navigation here that we can copy. So we have tabs. We have pills. Let's see. Let's keep going down. We have nav bars. Okay, we're getting closer. Okay, we have these nav bars that we can click on this. Notice that if we look at the nav bars, notice that towards the end we have this fixed top and fixed bottom, right? Sample, right? So we can go there and see what it looks like, and we can copy one of these, right? So let's grab one of these, right? So we'll have this nav. So nav is one of the newer elements, HTML elements that were introduced in HTML5, right? That are meant for naming things, right, in the page, right? Such as in this particular case, it would be the nav, right, or an element or set of elements that are meant for navigation purposes. Yes, we call these type of elements, we call them semantic elements, or elements that that give a meaning to what it is that you're looking at, right? Is it a main piece of content, or is it a tangential piece of content, right, that I can skip over maybe, right? So for instance, the HTML5 declares semantic tags such as nav, right, section, article, right, aside. Those semantic elements allow you to give a very broad expectation of what piece of content would go there, right? So anyway, we're going to use this nav here. They behave just like any other div, right? It's just a block element, right, that gives me a rectangular piece of rectangular area where I can put stuff inside. So I'm going to copy this in there, and I'm going to paste it in the profile at the very top. Okay, right here. Okay, and if I go back and I keep looking at this, let's see. Notice that it's basically the nav bar that we have been looking at earlier, default nav bars, all these nav bars. But the only difference between these nav bars and the fixed stop ones, notice that it just says nav bar dash default. See that? But if you go a little further, the fixed stop basically takes the same exact nav bar, and the only difference is that it adds this nav bar fixed top. See that? That's the only difference between a non-fixed and a fixed one, right? So if you want to look at all these other contents, such as these links at the top of the nav bar and all these drop downs, those are for all nav bars, right? Whether you want it fixed or not. Okay, right? So if we want to copy here, such as this brand, kind of like title, right, of the entire page, we can copy some of these things, such as this brand over here, right? Notice that that it breaks up the nav bar into sections, right? For instance, this header, this kind of is like a collection of the elements, right, that are on this left-hand side, okay? Then down below, we have these other links, right, followed down underneath, such as these links down below, like this link, this action, another. All these items are over here. Link, drop down, and these links over here. That's built using this UL down here. See that? Okay. We don't want any of that. We don't need any of that. But just to show you where things are, if you want a form such as like a search, like an input field and a submit, like a search, notice that there's a form embedded here. See that? Right. And there's some classes that allow you to style it so that they appear from left to right. Right. That appears so you have navbar form, navbar left. We're not going to use any of this, right? But just to show you that you should become familiar with copying all this content, right, and playing around with it. We do need this. We will need the navbar header. So let's put the navbar header right here. Let's close that. Right, and in that navbar header, we're going to need this brand over here. This is going to be like our main title for this page. Okay, so we're going to copy that and we're going to paste it right here. Right. So if we come back and try to render this, okay, we have our basic top levels, page title header, stuck at the top, right? So that if this were smaller, if we have more content, the header would not move, right? That if you were scrolling. Right, I believe if we remove this, right, and we make it smaller, notice that the whole thing scrolls, right, but not the header, right? It's stuck way at the top. But what happened to that profile? What happened? It looks like it's like on top of something, right? And what happens here is because we're using static, right, to stick this header at the top, right? It's removed from the calculation of how high this thing is, right? So it's because it's removed from, because I'm using positions static or fixed, sorry. Right? If I right click on this and look at the implementation, where is it? Somewhere here. Margins, box size, and display. It's using the position. I can't find it. Oh, okay. I think I'm a little too low. Let me go here. There we go. Notice that's position fixed. See that? So that fixes at the top with right and left, right? So it stretches us all the way to either side. And notice that it puts a Z-index way high, so that it's meant to be on top of everything else, right? Nothing should be on top of that. So since here is what we're going to use for the title, this is going to be the profile, right? We don't need this profile header anymore, right? So we're going to remove it. Let's remove this. But notice what happens to the content. It seems to go under the header, right? And that's, again, it's because, right, it's removed from the normal rendering engine, right, because it's stuck at the top. So we need to compensate for that, right? We need to compensate for this header not pushing the other content down. So one way to accomplish that is to look at the body of the entire document and just push the body down, as high as the header is. So let's look at how high the header is. If we click on it, we'll notice that the height of the header is 50 pixels. Is 50 pixels. That means that we need to compensate for those 50 pixels, right, by pushing the is it 50 again? Yeah. By pushing the body. So if we look at the body, right, we can push it down at the top. Push it down, right, so that we compensate for those 50 pixels. Maybe a little more, right, to give it some white spacing, right, between these, right. So let's make it maybe 65. I like 65. Yes. Sorry? No, it'll scale. Scale nicely. The whole thing will scale. I was asking if we would accept affected by zooming. Well, first of all, we're turning off zooming, right? We're turning off zooming because zooming was it's a mechanism that is there to comply with older sites, right? Sites that are not phone friendly, right? And we all know that Google now in our search engines, it uses whether your website is responsive as a criteria for the search results, right? So make sure you follow responsiveness, because now that's one of the criteria that Google uses, right? So make sure that your sites are responsive, phone friendly, and so anyway, so we're going to turn off scaling. All right, so we need to compensate for that body. All right, so to do that, we need to style the body, right? To have this padding at the top of 65 pixels, right? So what do we do that? Should we do it here? Right? We could certainly do this, right? If we refresh, notice that it works. Yes? But that's a no-no, right? You should never do this directly on an element. It makes it so much more difficult to maintain for somebody else to be able to style this, and you will be frowned upon by your team members. Okay, so don't do a direct styling right on the elements, right? So another option, a little better, might be to style it right here, right? So we could take this style, we can remove it from the body, right, and instead apply it here. We can say body, right, and style it right here, right? So this would work as well, right? That would work. It's a little better, right? It's at the top. It's a single place of maintenance. All your styling is concentrated in one single place to maintain it, but only for this page, right? So again, it's a no-no. Maybe if you just want to do some example or some academic toying here just to illustrate a point, yes, but not in production, right? In production, you would never do something directly there, right? So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to link it. We're going to link to our own CSS file, right? Where do we put the CSS file? So a good place to put it is in a dedicated directory. We're going to put all the CSS files, right, that we create ourselves, right? Or any libraries, CSS libraries that we download, we would put them here. If you download Bootstrap, right, you would download all the CSS for that Bootstrap. You would paste it. You would put it in under this CSS directory, right? So let's create a style file. So called styles .css. That's a very common name, right? And so we can now copy this rule, right? Just take it out from here and put it in its rightful place. Okay. Then from within our website, we can then refer to the file instead of CSS styles. There it is. Relative style sheet. Okay. So if we refresh, notice that it's working. Right. Everybody okay? All right. What about this? The header. The header. There's also a header, right? Notice a fixed bottom, right? So we can do something similar. We can just copy that and put it down below, right? After at the bottom, right? So this would be the footer. Right. So if we refresh our page. Notice that the footer is way down there. Okay. Notice that the coloring is not quite right. And here you're free to choose whatever color scheme you want. Let's try a couple. If we go here, we'll notice that it's using the default color scheme from Bootstrap, which is some kind of light grayish background color. And I believe it's this class. Let's see, the styling, I can't find it. Maybe it's down further, nav bar. Oh, maybe up here. I don't see the coloring. Was there? Oh, there it is. Okay, so there it looks like this is where it's setting the color, right? Using the class navbar dash default. Notice that it's grabbing it from navbar.less. That's not one of ours, right? That must be from Bootstrap's, right? And typically you'll find yourself overriding Bootstrap's own look and feel, right? And that's one of the best ways to to stylize your own web pages to look more for your own particular marketing or your own particular look and feel, right? So here you could say red. That works? No, that one. Oh, I'm sorry. That's border color. No, we don't want that. Sorry. Let me refresh that. Oh, it must be this one. Navbar background color. There we go. So maybe blue. That's very jarring. Black. That could work. Navy. Maybe that'd be okay. But nevertheless, there's all sorts of colors that you might want to choose. There's Pantone CSS colors. There's some color pickers that you can play around with. That you can choose different color schemes. Some colors that go well together. Maybe this color. That you can copy it, right, and then come back and see what it would look like. If you like that color, right, you can play around with color schemes that are out there. Once you've decided on what particular color scheme you might want, you need to go back and actually override Bootstrap. Okay, so what we could do is say, okay, well, this is what Bootstrap chooses to color the default color for my navbar, right? So we can copy that. We can copy that, and we can go to our own style sheet, right, and declare our own rule, okay? And in there, we can copy our own color schemes, right? We can copy this right here, right, into our CSS, so that when we refresh the page, notice that it's now our color, right? It's overriding. If I look at the color scheme, notice that it's coming from where now? From styles.css, right? It's not coming from navbar.less. Notice, right, here's the rule that's coming from navbar. Notice that it has a strike through. It's saying that I want it to be this color, but somebody's overriding me, right? And the reason is they're being overwritten is because we have our own styles, right, declared after Bootstrap. See that? It's in the order. Right? If this were instead declared earlier, right? Notice that Bootstrap would take over. See that? We say we want it blue. Bootstrap says it's gray, right? And because it's later, right? Last one wins. Okay? All right. So let's put it back, and so that's our color scheme. What about this ugly font here? We can inspect it and see that that color. Notice that it's being implemented here by the nav brand, right? We can see. What about if that were white, right? So we can, if we like it, we can go back and override in our styles. We can go back to our styles and override and make it white, right? So we can reload and notice that we were able to change that as well. What about the checkbox on the right-hand side over here? Well, let's see. We can do that by using one of Bootstrap's Glyphicons. And so Bootstrap has all these Glyphicons that are free to use, or, as I pointed out last week, we can use Font Awesome. Right? Font Awesome has a lot of really cool icons, has a really large library of icons. So let's use one of these. For instance, I believe in the assignment we say to use this Glyphicon OK, right? And we can bring that into our web page, right? By declaring over here that we want span. We can use span class, and we can paste the Glyphicon classes here, right? And what that does, right, is that it brings the checkbox. But notice that it's missing some styling, right? Notice that it's stuck to the top, right? It's all the way to the left, right? That's because that left-hand side has a I believe it has a left float left, so that everything now is stuck to the right left-hand side. We could change that a little bit, and if you go back to Bootstrap and go back to the nav bar, we see that there are classes that allow you to add any generic content, right? If you just want a piece of text, right, to be well formatted as part of the nav bar, it has some class, right, that adds some top level margins and bottom level margins, so it's all centered nicely in the nav bar, right? If you see in your assignment or in your own project, things should not look like that. It looks weird, right? It's got stuck all the way to the top. It's not centered nicely on the top and bottom. Make sure that you look into these things, right? That you look that you don't have things like that in your own projects. So we could use that as styling maybe in a paragraph and class. What was it called? I forget. Navbar text. So navbar text. Okay, let's see what that does. Yeah, so notice that it adds some styling to make sure that it's centered now. And the last thing we want to do is maybe push this to the right-hand side, right, of the content. So maybe we can use one of our other classes such as pull right. Let's see if that works. Notice that pull right pulls it all the way to the right. A little bit too much though, right? A little bit too much. So we might want to add some margins, right, so that it's centered and flush maybe with this right-hand side over here. Okay. Again, make sure that that's part of the. We're going to look for that. The TAs and myself, right? We're going to look for proper use of white spaces, right? Things should not be flush all the way to the end. Notice that there's a nice white space over here that separates this. This is the default style that Bootstrap comes with, but yours should be as well. I think that the text of this here is about 15 pixels. So we can start tweaking, right, with the content here. Maybe we can say, we can look at that and push it a little bit to the left by providing maybe a margin to the right, 10 pixels, maybe it's enough. And I think it's 15. 15 makes it nice and flush with this line over here, right? Our visual cortex always looks for those things. Things are aligned, right? And yours should as well. Anyway, I'm going to leave it here. Work on this. Obviously, it needs to be styled to be white, right? Depending on what the background color you choose, right? So it looks nice, right? And we'll finish up the footer on when we meet later this Thursday. All right, thank you.